Welcome to the Liberty Action Network. I'm your guest host, Dave Corsi. Tonight we have a very special guest, the founder and the mother cub, or bear, I should say, of the Liberty Action Network, Ms. Doreen Finkel. Doreen, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We thought it would be very important and very instructive for our viewers to learn more about what went into the thinking behind creating the Liberty Action Network. So we kind of changed chairs tonight, and Doreen will be the guest. So to start off, Doreen, what inspired you to come up with the idea for the Liberty Action Network?
Well, the Liberty Action Network is the name of the TV station, and that is under the banner of the group called CampusTeaParty.com. That is a 501c3 nonprofit in New Jersey, and it's a philanthropy networking group that recruits college students and basically talks to them on campus. And what it does is tries to combat what we call the one-way ticket of liberalism that's going on the campuses, so that students have a general, shall we say, understanding of all points of view.
So a more rounded viewpoint from everybody's
Yes,
perspective.
and the Liberty Action Network TV is one means on how we do that. And by the same token, it is a type of media that's also being used to give other points of view that's not being seen in the mainstream media.
Yeah. About how long ago did you come up with the idea or start really formulating it?
Let's go back to, I would say, after the election of Barack Obama. Okay, but I always knew that college campuses were a one-way ticket to one-way type of thought because I have a master's degree in education. And in that field, it basically is a one-way type of ideology being taught to teachers who are going into the teaching program and students on college campuses.
So you found they were mostly being indoctrinated with
Yes.
a liberal point of view, and there was no counterbalance to that.
Absolutely not. And and I went to Montclair State University in New Jersey. I did my undergrad at William Patterson, and by doing this student recruit, which I want to mention, is I'm finding that this is on all the college campuses.
Right.
They're not being exposed to different points of view. And it's very dangerous to have that happen, especially in the higher ed, in the teaching pedagogy courses.
Right.
Because then those students go on to become teachers in your K through 12 system, and then you have what we call a circle.
Right. So all those kids are being influenced by professors with one point of view and obviously to the left.
Yeah, yes.
Now, you mentioned that, and it is interesting. Now, I graduated from William Patterson in 1979, and I remember even back then, most of my professors were pretty much hardcore avowed socialists. They proudly proclaimed that they were socialists, which I always thought was interesting because I used to always get into debates with them about how they believed in socialism, but I noticed they liked to profit
Yes.
from their teaching job, and they generally didn't appreciate that, which made my day.
Yes, and especially when you're in a master's degree program, a lot of the professors ask you to do a lot of writing, either in the form of a dissertation or a project as well.
Right.
And a lot of those students were basically doing projects that support the ideology
Right.
there.
To get their A.
Yes, and a number of students went out to form these local, shall you say, nonprofit organizations, and a lot of them were entitled Social Justice Education, Social Justice Institute, and it was all based upon the collective, how the students would say the collective is better.
Right.
And when I saw that, I went out to form a 501c3 nonprofit called Campus Tea Party with a little different
Slant.
slant, yes.
Right.
And our foundation is based upon the fact that it's not so much social justice, it's individual justice
Justice.
that makes the society prosper. And same thing with the school. And so then we have the beginning now of the corporation.
Right.
And that was incorporated back in 2010.
Okay.
And so far, I've been on just about every campus in the state of New Jersey.
Okay, and now that you've been on all the campuses doing it for a few years, what is the feedback? Are you running into any resistance on the campuses?
Good thing you mentioned that. Resistance, would I say maybe war?
War, aha.
Yes. But it's interesting, the war is coming from the administration, not so much the students.
Which would make sense because the administration has their own little fiefdom to protect, and you, in effect, are attacking that fiefdom of their way of thinking. And the one thing I've always remembered was I always said keep an open mind and question authority, unless it's their authority you're questioning. Then all of a sudden they're not so much into questioning the power brokers.
That's right. And, in saying that, especially a lot of the resistance coming from the administration, well, in doing this the past few years, I've been almost arrested twice.
Really?
Okay. By administration, not by the students. Okay.
What did they try to make, a citizen's arrest or call the police in, campus police, or what did they do?
Each time we had the right to be there.
Okay.
And the first time it was actually doing a voter registration drive. And it was at a community college in Morris County over here.
Okay.
And we were doing the voter registration drive, and until two men came out with handcuffs and, and ready to handcuff me. And what happened
On what grounds? What was the claim? Why did they feel that they had the right to arrest you? For trying to register people to vote? What's more
That's the deal.
American than that?
And they actually took the voter registration forms at that time. And what happened is the student who we got clearance from
Right.
did call the college and get the clearance. Okay.
So you followed the proper
We
channels.
followed proper procedure.
Okay.
Okay. And we don't know exactly how these campus police were notified, but at the time we had people walking around, and one fellow with us was an expert chess player, and he engaged the students in playing chess. And as he was doing that, the rest of us were walking around, and this particular fellow happens to like Sarah Palin.
Okay.
And he was talking to students about Sarah Palin and then comparing her to me like that. And then the
Okay.
students started chanting Sarah Palin, Sarah
Really?
Palin. So we have a feeling that noise signaled something. And so the police came down and, and they came out with the handcuffs, and I said, well, there's got to be a mistake. And they were like, there's no mistake. And I said, yes, there is a mistake. Let me call the student who authorized this. And I did. And he talked to the police, and the president of the college had cleared me and said
Right.
she has the right to be there, and had called the security off. And then the second time in doing this, we were at, believe it or not, a private college, Christian college called Valley Forge Christian College down by Valley Forge, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And the interview was with a professor. And we did have security there. And it was still, to this day, it was unknown whether he had the right to be there. But what happened was the guys came out, and
Why wouldn't a professor at a college have the right to be at his college?
we don't know if he had got the clearance.
Oh, the clearance for you to
So-
come. Okay.
But anyhow, the guys came down, and it's almost the same situation. They want to know what you're doing
Right.
here, this, that, and the other thing. And the president happened to be very nice, but he was a little bit strict with his policy.
Right.
But we did wind up doing the interview, and it was off campus. And so, you do run into these little tidbits with administration.
Right.
And so the idea, is to see how you get around administration.
Right.
To break through these kids
Do you
at
think when
college
they hear the name
campuses.
Campus Tea Party, that might be what sets them off? When they hear the words Tea Party, which
Yes.
many on the left think is some kind of code word that people are secretly using for some kind of subversive activity?
Could be. I mean, the Tea
Okay.
Party has so painted
It becomes a
tainted
lightning
his name.
rod. Either people love them or
So-
hate them. Right.
Right. So, but the idea is to basically get at the students and not really at the
Right.
administration.
And you're thinking now, you seem to be focusing on the young people.
Yes.
And what is your rationale for dealing with the young people as opposed to people our age or older?
Well, they're our future.
Okay.
And the
Makes
young
sense.
people, right now, the way this country is the ones who are going to save it are the future.
Right.
Because they have more at stake than,
Right.
you or I or even the elderly.
Right.
And so they need to take back what's going on in this country. They need to be educated in the fact that, that we can't have government spending to 17 trillion.
Right.
Okay.
They're the ones who are going to have to be paying that debt back. Is
That's
what you're
right.
saying. Sure.
That's right. So, so they need to know how to do it and take leadership roles in taking
Right.
this country back, because the drive will come from them.
Right. So the encouraging note I seem to find from you, it's the older generation trying to block you from communicating with these students, but the kids seem very receptive.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
It's something to be hopeful about. But that's
you,
a,
you,
that's
you
a
had
start.
mentioned something about the name Tea Party, especially on
Right.
CampusTeaParties.com.
Right.
Well, recently we changed the name to Students for a Better Future.
Okay. Has a nice ring to it.
It certainly does. And we were at William Patterson the other day, and
Okay.
they seemed to like that name.
Good.
And so as long as you don't stick to a political party,
Right.
and that's another thing I want to mention, the students have a great deal of distrust among political parties,
Right.
both Republicans
Both sides.
and Democrats. And so Students for a Better Future doesn't mention any political party, and we're not political.
Right.
Because,
It's more about educating them to the issues involved in any particular thing that happens to be up, like the pros and the cons of either, I guess, the liberal or conservative side, for lack of a better term. So in other words, you're trying to give them the, as you said before, the rounded view.
yes,
great.
the rounded view. And this particular group, all its job is to do is to educate students
Right.
on being fiscally responsible.
Okay.
And to elect candidates who are fiscally responsible, and know who your candidate is, not just go to the polls and click the line, vote Democrat,
Right.
without even knowing who you vote for
Voting
in
for.
there. And same thing for the Republicans.
Right.
And, and when I was at William Patterson, I don't know how to say this. I love the Republicans because my fans know I'm a registered Republican. But I'm being quite honest, it doesn't sell.
Right.
Okay? And for good reason,
Yes.
it doesn't
I
sell.
find most people who aren't tend to think Republicans are a bunch of rich folks sitting around a country club, not caring about anybody but themselves, which I always found kind of humorous, because if you actually look at it, the party with the big bucks, so to speak, are really the Democrats.
Right.
The richest people in Congress tend to be Democrats. Wall Street is mostly Democrat, and yet the image persists that the Republicans are the ones who are controlling all this.
Right. If you just talk sensible policy
Right,
with the students, you're going to win them over.
right.
Okay? If you bring, again, political party, anything of that nature in, you're going to turn
Right.
them off.
Right.
Especially, and even the Tea Party, to some degree, student sees that name, they
Right.
don't like it because the media
Right.
has tainted the name there.
Right, and I think a lot of the kids too. We remember when we were kids, you didn't like to be preached to,
You don't.
and both sides were probably they still. I watch the same political speeches, and whichever party's making it, then they have their handlers come on a talk show talking about what a brilliant speech it was. It might have been a horrible speech, but they're going to talk
That's right.
about, because they're talking up their side, and I think kids can spot that, don't you?
They can. And, and I know this from working on the college campuses,
Right.
and which I when I went to William Patterson, which was recently, we happened to talk about the women's movement and the sex
Okay.
revolution.
And how did that go over?
That went over well with them.
Who would have thought?
Right. Who would have thought? Do we know sex sell? But the idea of that was to see where they are, their knowledge about communism.
Okay.
Because communism has a way of infiltrating curriculum and dumbing down the culture.
Right.
Okay, and making people think that certain behaviors are right. Okay, especially
right.
sexual behaviors. Okay,
Right.
and where they may not be appropriate or not.
Right. I'm curious, how did the students react to this when you brought up the sexual revolution? What were their thoughts? Did they think it was too
I will tell you.
promiscuous, or what did they think was going on?
I will tell you, they know me by my first name now.
Really? But what was their take on it? Do they, in other words, were you saying to them, do you watch cable TV or even regular television now? Do you find it overtly sexual, or is that the kind of thing you were asking?
That
or?
was the type of questions in the survey.
Right.
Yes.
And
okay.
what was your general response?
Because what the survey was designed to do was to see students' attitudes on how their attitudes have been shaped and manipulated by society.
Okay.
Okay, and we know that in the past, for example, women have certain expectations of men, okay?
Sure.
They might see the dark-haired men as more successful
Okay.
than a blonde-haired guy,
Okay.
okay? And, therefore, women might marry them because if he's more successful, he might make more money.
Sure. And
That is-
conversely, I'm assuming men, the blonde versus the brunette, the dumb blonde stereotype versus the brunette intellectual. Is that the kind of thing we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
And that was actually a question in the survey, how men view their ladies based
Right.
upon blondes, brunettes, redheads, and
Right.
and whatever. And it pointed out how you got into a little of the EEOC, that's the Equal Opportunity Employment. And when employers hire, right now the EEOC says you can't discriminate upon race. Well, of course we shouldn't.
Right.
And whatever, ethnicity or whatever.
Right.
But it does not include the color of a person's hair,
Right. Right.
believe it or not.
Well, thank God it doesn't, in my opinion, because now you're getting into it's bad enough they have all these rules and regulations, because I could just picture all these lawsuits coming out. They didn't hire me because I was
Right.
a blonde. Which, again, we end up paying for all these ridiculous lawsuits.
That's where we're going
Right,
in
right.
society. That's
Exactly.
exactly
Oh,
where we're
yes,
going
absolutely.
because the left preaches this political correctness.
Right.
Okay, and well, the idea is if you're going to be politically correct, then, you have to be politically correct all the way around. You got to
Right.
hire a number of blondes, a number of brunettes, a number of redheads, or whatever.
Right. So you have your quotas. It's a quota system, in effect. And they'll use the court system, I believe you're saying, to fulfill their destiny
Yes.
or their goal, objective, what have you.
Yes, and it was also a part of that, and it also asked the male how, if he was an accountant, for example, and he was
Right.
he was an employer,
Okay.
and he was hiring, and he had, for example, 3 women, okay, all of the same color hair,
Okay.
but some were more shapely than others.
Okay.
Okay, so, and they were all equally qualified. Which one would he hire? So looked at preferences like that.
Okay. And so in this example, it'd be you're looking at they would decide by the shape because they're qualified and all have the same hair.
Yes.
What was the outcome? What did the kids say?
I got some very astute people because
Right.
they knew exactly what I was asking. Basically, are you attracted, when you go to hire somebody, are you attracted to a more physical feature first
Right.
than their qualifications?
Right.
And if so, we as a society need to be aware that we are doing this.
Right.
So, I don't want to say discriminating, but, we need, as a
Right.
society, need
Well,
to be
people
aware
have
that we're doing
natural
this.
preferences no matter, people are subjective animals. And what I find ridiculous with all this is they always try to make things objective, and they don't. Everybody has their own preferences in one form or another, but yet they'll turn that into some kind of terrible thing of discriminating. The word discrimination is not necessarily a bad word. It's a neutral word. If you discriminate against somebody coming at you with a gun, is that wrong?
That's right.
No,
Right.
your instinct, what have you, is this person's coming to do me harm. I will discriminate against him and get away from him and go by somebody that I feel I'm more attuned to.
Right, and the idea was to get the students feeling on, where they are in society,
Right.
and to, let them know, that you have to be aware of this at the same time,
Sure.
that this goes on.
Sure.
And the students, they love that. They love
Right.
that survey.
Well, yeah, it's kind of interactive too because you're getting their opinion, which I think a lot of people really want, to be able to express their opinion, especially on something that has an emotional attachment instead of some boring, static idea that doesn't mean anything to them.
Well, that's right, and it raised their level of interest so
Sure.
much that
Sure.
a lot of them know me now by
Right.
my first name.
Right. So now that you did this survey, what would be some other ideas to follow through with, follow up? Do you have any other ideas? What kind of surveys you would want to bring to the campuses to get their thoughts?
Yes, I want to. I do have a survey again coming out for the women. It's almost the
Okay.
same type of survey.
Based on men?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're also working on some surveys that actually deal with the economy,
Okay.
and jobs, and how the students feel about jobs, and
Right.
how they feel about what's going on in this current
Right.
day economy, and and this way we can understand where they're coming from.
Right.
And it's worked very well because there's no pressure upon somebody like me to go into a campus and force kids to form a group,
Right.
because
There's plenty of groups out there. You just want to make them aware and then kind of let it follow its natural progression, I believe. Isn't that kind of the idea you're talking about?
yes.
Okay.
See, what the students don't know is about, well, they haven't lived under communists,
Right.
but they don't know about a man called George Lukács,
And who's George
the
Lukács?
father of modern-day communists.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about him. Educate us.
He had a book out. I don't remember the name offhand, but what he did was, he's actually a communist, by the way. He was
Right.
born in Hungary.
Okay.
And
Was he in America eventually, or?
no,
Okay.
but he wrote a lot of the philosophy on today's communists and
Okay.
how they should infiltrate societies like
Okay.
Western societies.
And I assume people like Gus Hall of the American Communist Party were influenced by him then.
Very much so.
Okay.
And he also said that, gave his ideas about how we should get a hold of the education system and
Control the young minds.
control the young minds and make it think that certain behaviors were appropriate.
Such as?
Sexual deviant behaviors.
Okay.
Okay. Like, any kind. I mean,
Pornography, what have you.
Yes,
Things that, again,
pornography.
get people in a very
right.
pallor state, for lack of a better term, and just, they're easier to take over. Turning people into sheep,
Right.
I would assume.
Right, because he understood that when you get a hold of the education system, you
Right.
get a hold of a
Right.
country,
Right,
because
sure.
you
'Cause
get
that's
a
where
hold.
the future of the country is.
Right, you get a hold of the young minds.
Right,
So that's the background to this,
right,
and so what we need to do is to educate students that this is happening, and and I don't want to pick on William Patterson just because of the fact
Right.
that I was there. But the college campuses, especially if you're in the humanities area, it's pretty much either left or
Right.
communist.
Right.
Okay, and they won't. If you're a teacher or somebody going on to become a professor who shares a different view,
Right.
they won't hire you.
About to say, it must be impossible to get tenure. I know I've read stories from Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams about you will look at a department in a college that might have 50 professors in that department, and you'd be lucky if 5% of them were what would be considered to the right. The rest were all to the left. So as you say, that's skewing everything to one point of view and kind of dumbing down the kids.
Right. And the EEOC doesn't have anything in its law
Okay.
that I guess you can fight this.
Right.
So
So they
therefore,
conveniently left that part out when they're so
They-
worried.
right,
It's
they
kind of
did.
like the American Civil
They did.
Liberties Union, always avoiding anything that they politically tend to be against, and suddenly they don't want to take it on. But anything that they feel is right, all of a sudden it becomes a rights issue that they jump on. And it's
That's
very
right.
hypocritical.
that it is so hypocritical, and they're not going to tell you that they're not hiring you. They
Right.
just won't hire
Right,
you.
right,
Therefore, the burden of proof then falls upon you
right,
to reverse the cases.
right.
And there is a group called FIRE, Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, which now is taking on some of these cases.
Okay.
So
So in effect, we're going to fight them with their own medicine. Go after them
Fight
and
them with
use the
their own
court, do the
medicine.
same thing, bog them down and bring
and-
them into the quicksand.
Right, and it's our platform is based upon individual justice,
Right.
because when you promote social justice, it infringes upon the right of the individual.
Right.
Okay, so therefore, if you seek individual for yourself and yourself first, and you promote the ideas of, let's say, self-reliance. Okay, and
Then you avoid groupthink, and then they can't control you if everybody has
You
an
got it.
independent mind.
you got it.
Absolutely.
So, but in order for democracy to work, you need to have this countering opinion,
Right. Right.
this countering school of thought. And I want to talk about Students for a Better Future.
Okay.
What we plan on doing is we plan on continuing with these types of surveys and just going out to the college campuses and recruiting college students, okay, and and growing it there, and maybe someday they will have their own group.
So the future then is to get the kids involved and start turning it around and letting them see the other side.
That's right.
Doreen, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think you came up with a brilliant idea, and it's great to see us going on the offensive and taking it to them instead of always playing defense. And I want to thank you, and I hope you enjoyed being in the guest chair tonight.
I did.
And everybody, hope you have a great evening, and God bless. I thought it was very good. I think something was good to get the background in. Because a lot of people